everyone. So before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. A bit of housekeeping. Like everyone knows, please keep yourselves on mute. We're going to have like a Q&A session midway. I encourage everyone to use the chat. If you do have questions that you want to, keep us in the loop, just pop them into the chat so then we can actually review them. David is going to go through an exciting presentation today and is going to have a few timing allocated for you to ask any questions you may have. And David, just, for everyone, is going to introduce himself, but he's got a great consultancy, Try Elix. So you can see the logo on the bottom right of the screen. And he's also very involved with universities. I've had the pleasure of working with David the last year in 2025 in various universities, and he presented some great topics on leadership, especially around project management, and he's got some really good frameworks for you to take away today. So without any further ado, I will give the hand to David to introduce himself and start the session. Thank you, David.
And I will share screens.
Mm-hmm.
Can you confirm you can see a project success through leadership? Fantastic. Great.
I'm sorry, could you share again the video code? Thank you so much.
The PDU code is going to be right at the end.
Thank you so much.
The last slide. No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Welcome. And thank you for taking an hour out of your busy day. And I know it's February and it's not as busy maybe as other periods, but I really appreciate it. Today, I want to talk about project success through leadership. And during the session, I'll talk a little bit about my background and just give you an update on, how I got to do what I do. But I want to start off with some questions. Have you ever felt overwhelmed in your career? Have you felt you're just one step away from failure? Or worried you might be exposed as an imposter? Yes, pick me, pick me. Have you struggled to consistently deliver project success? Have you ever been confused about your next career step? Well, I just want to let you know I struggle with these questions all through my career. I want you to know you're not alone. Most of my colleagues, that we discuss this and we say, life can be challenging and so are our careers. So please realize that. I want to share a personal story. I remember a moment in my career that changed everything for me. I was leading a complex project surrounded by brilliant technical minds. But the team was struggling. Deadlines were slipping, communication was breaking down, and I felt overwhelmed. One afternoon, I felt quite stressed more than ever, and I actually went into the meeting room and sat there with my hands and my head like this, just overwhelmed, saying, am I cut out to do this type of work? It was then my mentor, Richard, and you all need a mentor. I really encourage you to do that. Richard came in and said, I want you to understand, David, technical expertise will get you started, but it's your ability to connect with people, to listen and to lead with empathy that will define your success. This was about 20 years ago when Richard said that. Now, that conversation sparked a journey for me personally, a journey of learning, reflection, and growth that ultimately shaped who I am today in front of you and inspired me to write some books. And I'm up to number 5 today, and I want to talk about my latest book with you. Now, why write a book? Well, this latest book is a culmination of my personal and professional mission. As you look at me, I'm not 25 anymore. I want to leave a legacy that honours the knowledge and experience of my colleagues. Everything I talk about is the knowledge that others have shared to me, because I want to guide the next generation of technical professionals. Now, my journey towards understanding project success has spanned over 2 decades, 5 publications, and countless projects. I'm very grateful to everyone who contributed their time and insights into the journey that I've been through. For example, 180 technical professionals I've interviewed as part of my research. Now, the material from today is covered in my new book, which will all get a digital copy at the end of the session. So please don't worry too much about the graphics because you'll get the book. While we're only going to touch on some core concepts during our session, please refer to the book at any time to deepen your understanding. Before I start, I looked at the audience and there's a lot of people in this room that know a lot of stuff. I want to acknowledge that enormous amount of experience. My goal today is to complement what you are already doing, not replace it. Some of the concepts I share will actually be obvious and you'll go, yes, while others may provide a different perspective on projects. Simply take the concepts that work for you. I would like to provide a high-level overview of first, project success, technical leadership, the success formula, and project delivery. Let's have a look at project success. Who has heard of Simon Sinek? I'm a big fan of Simon. He's an American thought leader. And he taught me something that he believes people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And he uses an example of Apple to demonstrate this concept. Now, when Apple communicate what they do, they go from the center of the circle, why, out to the what. For example, Apple would say, we believe in changing the world and making a difference. That's their why. They then say how we do this is by challenging the status quo and designing beautiful things that help people. And then they say, by the way, do you want to buy our laptop? I was sold by the why before they even got to the laptop. And that's the important thing that I've learned in projects. Simon helped me understand in terms of our projects, people are more inclined to support the purpose, your why behind the project, rather than the project itself, what you're actually doing. And I believe we need to communicate our projects from the center out. Now, in terms of projects, our why could be described as it's our dedication to sustainability, excellence in people, the environment, community, business performance to ensure project success. Our how could be it's our approach and the core principles that we use and apply to achieve this future in delivering project success. And the what is what we do day to day in achieving this sustainable future. For example, day to day, we'll achieve this sustainable future by applying various frameworks, which I'd like to discuss today, such as technical leadership, project fundamentals, and the project success framework. Let's look at technical leadership. So make yourself comfortable. We'll spend a little bit of time going through concepts. I would like to talk about a typical professional career journey, and then the importance of changing your game along that journey, and then what are the common mistakes we make when we work in projects. So the roles of a technical specialist, technical manager, or senior executive, they're distinct, but they do evolve sequentially through our careers. Now, in writing this book, I've interviewed 38 people from government, unis, industry, from technical specialists to CEO. And during our time together, I will share some of their quotes for reflection. For example, this is a technical manager I interviewed who works in strategy space and believes in technical leadership, the focus shifts from hands-on technical work to overseeing projects, guiding teams and ensuring quality, often bridging the different functional silos that we have in our projects. So the technical professional career journey, here's one example that people have helped me understand. We often start as a technical specialist. We have academic studies or professional training, and we have a deep knowledge, technical knowledge. Over time, we may move into a project leader where we start by managing small projects or teams. We then can move into a technical manager, which is what I am, And I had to transition from hands-on technical work to overseeing projects and guiding teams. You could become a general manager who is responsible for a single business unit and all the functions, HR, IT, production. You could even become an executive manager who could be responsible for multiple businesses, and they set strategic direction. Now, during my research, we've also observed there's a shift in technical focus and leadership over this evolution that we go through. A technical specialist focuses on technical work with some leadership. Midstream, a technical manager like myself needs to balance my technical focus and my leadership. While an executive manager, it's all about leadership with some technical. We also have observed there's a link with our technical leadership and a project, and we call this the project leadership continuum. Now, the leadership continuum describes the project dimensions we all know of: scope, complexity, and change management, and then overlays this technical and leadership focus. At one end of the continuum, the project scope is limited and simple, with targeted change just requiring some strong technical focus and some leadership. As we move towards the middle, the scope, complexity, and change increases along the continuum. We need to balance our focus on both technical aspects and leadership. Approaching the other end of the continuum, the project scope becomes broad, complex, and involves transformational change, requiring us to have strong leadership focus with some technical focus. I want to reinforce this. The leadership transition, our choice to make this transition from a technical specialist to an executive, is your call. Everyone I've spoken to has said this. Myself personally, I started off as a fitter and turner, and then went as a mature age to do engineering, then went and studied commerce, and then went and worked in mining and contracts in all different places. But I only ever became a technical manager because I love technical things, but I needed to also develop skills in leadership to deliver my work. This is a great quote from a person I interviewed. A technical specialist who works in a global role, helping sites around the world, and he believes, I feel like I'm very good at what I do as a technical specialist. I'm a subject matter expert in some areas, both globally and locally. I wonder, what's my biggest value to the company and to the world? Is it staying technical and doing what I know well? And it's a really good question to ask, because you don't have to go into the other spaces. Now, the focus of the book that you'll get a copy of really is around technical specialists, project leaders, and technical managers. There are far better books out there on general management and leadership who can teach you so much more than I could ever do. So let's imagine you decide to make the transition. As many of you know, because you're through your career at different phases, there will be obstacles. Now, these obstacles to the transition, it's crucial to understand when deciding to advance to your next role across this leadership continuum. As the graphic illustrates, numerous obstacles hinder our transition from a technical specialist to a project leader and ultimately to a technical manager. It's never a straight line. It's a cycle of twists and turns. Now let's look at the cyclic nature of the transition. The importance of changing your game to stay on top of your game is critical. And I'd like to explore, what do the All Blacks and the Sigmoid curve have in common with remaining on top of your game? Let me explain. I imagine you all know the All Blacks. They're from New Zealand, and the All Blacks have used the Sigmoid curve to help them be the best rugby union team in the world. The All Blacks are the most successful international men's rugby side of all time. They have a winning percentage, wait for it, of 77% over 580 tests from 1903 to 2019. It's incredible. From 2010 to present, their win rate is 92%. Now the All Blacks are disciples of the Sigmoid curve. Now, it all started when they were eliminated from the 2003 World Cup. The All Blacks and the country struggled with this failure. Anyone that's been to New Zealand, the All Blacks are just core to their identity. They did a lot of soul searching and the team realised they'd lost their way. They completed a major review involving administrators, psychologists and psychiatrists, and they were introduced to the Sigmoid curve. Now, we often see life, business, society, and success as a linear progression, a progress of constant and never-ending reinforcement and growth. But the opposite is true. Does this match your life experience? My life is far from linear. It's never been linear. My life is certainly not a straight line progression. Like many things in nature, cultures are subject to a more cyclic process of growth and decline. Now, this matches my life far better. My life has been a series of ups and downs. The Sigmoid curve describes this cycle as having 3 distinct phases: learning, growth, and decline. Now, in the learning phase, we often experience dips in actual performance. For example, during COVID, pivoting to the digital world as a facilitator of projects provided me the opportunity to change my game. Initially, my progress went backwards as I experimented and learnt new things. Now, this time was very confronting for me because I was in my late 50s and I'm having to get hold of Zoom and Teams, and it just was really stressful. However, I had support and I was able to take that corner and start to change my game. Now, with practice, my progress and growth accelerated. I learnt what did and did not work, and I continued to improve, moving up that growth curve. As demand for digital collaboration increased, so did the complexity of my work. I was then powering along. I published a book at the end of COVID on collaboration in the digital world and approached the top of my game and the inevitable decline. I've experienced this decline phase a number of times through my life. And what I learned is it sneaks up on you as you struggle to find purpose and passion in what you're doing. Now, the Sigmoid curve teaches us the key to this continual growth is through an upward shift to a new curve before the current one is too far in decline. Now, the best time to make this transformational change is when the initial curve is still on the rise, since you feel confident. You have these resources, you have this energy. To put it another way, the best time to change your game is when you're on top of your game. In reality, life is a series of jumps along the Sigmoid curve, often called a Sigmoid leap. My digital collaboration journey has taught me to continually reinvent myself and adapt my approach. My post-COVID Sigmoid leap was amazing, running multiple global hybrid workshops involving 30 people in 5 languages, 7 virtual meetings, 5-day workshops in London, Montreal, Spain. In this case, the decline phase was less intense since I made the leap early, just as I finished my book. Now I bring you to me now. My latest life change, the Sigmoid leap, has been extremely challenging. I was slow to start my next Sigmoid leap and got caught in the decline phase. I'm now into my leap and you can see I'm at the bottom of the curve and my new book's been published and I'm starting to work with people and beginning to reinvent what I do in my professional life, which is really about being a mentor and a coach and helping the next generation. I want you to understand your career is simply a series of Sigmoid leaps. You may be at the first leap. You're completing an undergraduate degree. Or maybe postgraduate, you could be in your second leap. If you're a mature age student, it may be your third leap. If you're further in your career, it could be your 7th or 8th leap. I have taken 15 of these Sigmoid leaps through my career to become a technical manager. Typically, every 3 years, I go through this cycle of decline and then up and decline. And I only learned this really a number of years ago, but I wish I knew this when I started my career. So that's why I want to share with people. The technical leadership pyramid is the model which provides detailed actions to help you make that transition and is fully explored in the book, which you'll be able to get a copy of later. Let's look at some of the mistakes that I've learnt. My research identified common mistakes technical professionals make through their careers. In 2015, I published Project Success Through Leadership Edition 1. The book you're going to get a copy of is Edition 2. The research for this book involved speaking to highly experienced and evolved professionals. I wanted to find out the challenges that were preventing them from enjoying consistent project success. The results of interviewing more than 70 capable technical specialists, project leaders, managers, CEOs were collated. I then analysed and organised these responses around what I call the 7 key mistakes people make. Working from the bottom, you can start to see it's all about forgetting people make the difference. As we go round the circle, it's choosing and developing the wrong people. It's failing to connect and communicate. It's failing to provide vision and direction. It's initiating change without acceptance. Ignoring uncertainty and complexity and not keeping the balance. Now, along with these mistakes, these really clever people gave me some strategies to help us avoid those mistakes. Now, applying these 7 vital fundamentals for effective leadership will help deliver project success and avoid the mistake. For example, being self-aware and organised ensures you do not forget that people make the difference. Building, developing and retaining an effective team prevents you from choosing and developing the wrong people. Engaging, aligning and involving stakeholders avoids failing to connect and communicate. Inspiring, motivating and empowering the team avoids falling into the problem of not providing a vision and direction. Executing the project to drive acceptance prevents initiating change without acceptance. Ignoring, identifying and managing risks avoids ignoring uncertainty, complexity and chaos. And cultivate a healthy and productive workplace helps to prevent people from not keeping the balance. Central to this notion, I really want you to understand that success, as my mentor taught me, hinges on people. Without wholeheartedly embracing this concept, as technical professionals, we will struggle to implement the other fundamentals. Now, if you refer to my book for a full explanation of this model and specific actions you can take to prevent these mistakes. Take a moment, reflect on each fundamental and imagine the potential achievements your team could achieve if you excelled in these areas. Another quote. A technical manager I interviewed has had a wide and varied career focus on innovation. He believes at university, especially in engineering, you're trained in the process, whether it's mechanical, chemical, or another field. It involves understanding the problem, scoping it, building a model, and testing it. In a team leader space, you almost have got to remove yourself from the content and apply this process to managing teams around you. A very clever man, this one, I know. He's a wonderful person. Before I go on, I just wanted to open up for any questions. And you can email these questions to me later if you're not sure.
If you want, you can unmute yourself and ask a couple of questions. There was one question that I asked for everyone. Do you think the introduction of AI would change the shape, the speed, and the sequencing of the sigmoid curve?
Wow. Well, I'm not sure, but what I can say is the introduction of AI, for me personally, is amplifying the importance of engaging with people. And we've discussed this, Letitia, because I joke with people that we used to write a report and the report could take us 2 weeks. Now you can write a report using AI in 20 seconds. And that really highlights that challenge. If no one read your report that took you 2 weeks, how are you going to get people to read your report that you produced in 20 seconds? So I think this concept of people is just going to get more and more important as the technical work gradually gets taken by AI. That's my feeling, but it's a great question.
Anyone else? I'm just looking at the chat. See? So there is a question from Sundar. How much are organizations prepared to invest in their people?
Gee, that's a good question. Not sure I can answer that. I believe it's critical organizations invest in their people, but I also think it's critical as individuals we invest in our people and our colleagues as well. So if you're in an organization and it's a situation where you're leading the team, it may be the business just has no budget to do training and formal. But I want to reassure you, you can make a huge difference the way you work with people in your day-to-day work at developing their skills around people and the way they work. Often we think we need to do formal training, but most of what I've learned is been through my mentors and colleagues who have coached me. Everything in the book primarily is through my experiences with other people, helping me become better at what I do.
Thanks. I think we don't have any other questions. We can continue.
We'll continue. So we've got about 20 minutes to go, and then we'll continue on and ask some more questions. So we started off and we looked at a typical career journey that we can take, and it really became clear that you do not have to become an executive officer. You can remain a technical specialist all your career and be brilliant and provide so much great things for the world. We then talked about the mistakes. We talked about the sigmoid curve, and be prepared to change your game always. And as Letitia said, with AI, we're going to be changing a lot. Let's talk about some other concepts. I want to introduce the leader success factors. Now, the following 7 leader success factors are crafted to help technical specialists, technical professionals transition into effective leaders. Now, these can be divided into 2 strategies. First is the success formula, which serves as a foundation for project success. The second strategy is project delivery, which applies the fundamental elements described in the success formula to our actual work. Let's look at the success formula and the first 3 leader success factors. We need to recognize that different conversations are needed for success. Different conversations. We need to acknowledge the importance of harnessing facilitation, and we have to embrace collaboration as a catalyst for project success. Success factor 1. We will deliver better projects by having different conversations. As I moved through my career, I realized project success is all about different conversations. I published this book, Facilitating for Success, originally in 2012 and then updated again in 2015. The research for this book involves speaking to highly intelligent people like you over many years, as well as my own personal growth of working and facilitating hundreds of projects. It actually started in 2000 when I completed my black belt training in Six Sigma. I then applied these thought processes to my work. I then moved into HR to establish a project management office and began training people to run better projects. before I started Tri-Helix Group 14 years ago. We've observed that successful projects engage in various types of conversations. For example, a successful team facilitates open, technical acceptance conversations. Over the years, we've built an extensive suite of conversations, topics, that can act as this third point of reference when you want to have these types of conversations. These topics are facilitated to build openness, deliver the technical work, and ensure acceptance of the technical work in hearts and minds. I want you to observe the chart's balance. It illustrates the necessity of the four distinct types of conversations to ensure we execute the project fundamentals effectively. Facilitation lies at the core of project fundamentals, directly impacting all of the aspects. Facilitation will significantly enhance, magnify the effectiveness of the openness, the technical and acceptance work on your project. Let me introduce success factor 2. We will deliver better projects by harnessing facilitation. I also want to reinforce these colours are really important. From now on, these colours get reproduced and there's a real meaning behind them. A leader invests in facilitation, the red, to amplify openness, yellow, and acceptance, green, of the technical work, blue, and recognise its pivotal role in project success. Now, 25 years ago, I started playing with this formula. Initially, F-T-A. In 2013, I bolstered it with a whole bunch of more project management type focus. And then in 2018, I introduced the openness to the formula. This success formula demonstrates the relationship between these various types of conversations required for project success. It's important to understand that facilitation, the red F, is a key function of technical leadership and describes the way you plan and deliver these conversations. They do not happen without you. The formula shows that facilitation is not just an additional component. It influences and amplifies the openness, the technical and acceptance work. If you put a number in the formula and F is a big number, everything will be bigger on the right-hand side. So facilitation's fundamental to us as leaders. Success factor number 3, we will deliver better projects by embracing collaboration. As I said earlier, coming out of COVID in 2022, I published this book, Collaboration in a Digital World. It was important to understand why people collaborate. What's the purpose or belief for everybody to get on Zoom? Why? Why do they want to interact with each other? More importantly, why do people want to collaborate at all? And I wanted to know an answer to that question. So I interviewed 60 people from 17 sectors and simply have a look at the diversity of the people on the list and asked one question: why do we collaborate? Well, in fact, what we learned, collaboration is part of our DNA. We have no choice. It's how we are wired. It's driven by our emotions. It's driven by nature, the way we've developed, our personal connections with each other, and our interactions. And it's continuing to happen through the human evolution of the way we proceed, like AI. So as a leader collaborates effectively to broaden your project influence, driving facilitation, red, openness, yellow, technical, blue, and acceptance conversations, thereby making your project successful. Now, as the formula shows, collaboration, it's a big C because it's a big thing. It actually drives all of our facilitation efforts, our openness, our technical and acceptance conversations. Collaboration actually makes things happen. If we don't collaborate, nothing really goes on. Collaboration is how we bring the success formula and our projects to life. So I'm curious, reflect on your current projects. Do you use collaboration to broaden your project's influence? Here's a wonderful quote As part of my research, I interviewed the Australian Olympic gymnastics team from Tokyo. Now, they believed as individuals, each gymnast is an elite athlete at the top of their game. But as a group, they became Olympians. They recognised by themselves they wouldn't have made it to the Olympics. They did not have the ability to compete alone, but as a group, they did. They believed it's a beautiful thing for all 6 of us to be working towards one goal, knowing that without each other, we would not have been able to do it. They could not have gone to the Olympics. On a side note, which I find fascinating, in rhythmic gymnastics, they are actually scored on collaboration. That's what they call a routine, collaboration. So it's really in deep in what they do. So we've just talked about the success formula and the various ways that we can take these concepts. Now let's apply reality, those colours, to delivery in your project. We'll focus on 4 to 7 of the leader's success factors. The first, we'll identify how to optimise the project lifecycle, understand the importance of shifting focus during a project, apply the appropriate mix to have the right conversations, and apply responsive problem solving to keep the project on track. Success factor number 4, we will deliver better projects by optimising the project lifecycle. Now, a leader directs the appropriate effort and focus according to the project lifecycle stage, ensuring strong ownership and acceptance. As a technical specialist or a project leader, you and your team hold significant influence over a project's success, particularly at its outset. The decisions you make within your team early can yield substantial value, positioning the project for success by identifying the most beneficial idea for the business. Now, as the project produces through the life cycle, opportunities to alter this diminish. I think we've all worked on projects. Once we get into execution, we can't change it. Instead, the focus shifts to refining and executing the project plan. Choosing a poor idea initially will result in delivering a sub-poor outcome with minimal value. Conversely, selecting a strong idea fosters value creation and ensures robust ownership and acceptance throughout the life cycle. Take a moment, reflect on your current projects. Do you direct the appropriate effort and focus within the project life cycle? Here's another really cool quote. A technical manager who's worked on many projects said to me, and he believes it's important to recognise that people often prefer which life cycle stage they enjoy working in. And I support this because I've learned that the life cycle requires different skills and it's critical to match the right person to the job. I have a passion for the early stages of a life cycle. My creativity and all these ideas and conceptual thinking just come alive. However, I've learned my conceptual thinking and lack of discipline is not conducive to the later stages of a project life cycle. I've learned there are far more talented people who can deliver the project and execute the project. And in my career, I made a real habit of being involved in the early phases and then giving the project management and the execution to someone completely different, because that wasn't me. Success factor number 5. We will deliver better projects by shifting focus during the project lifecycle. Now, this is my favorite graphic in all of my books. Again, note the colors are very important. A leader consistently facilitates red, collaborates dark blue, and regulates emphasis on the openness, yellow, technical, light blue, and acceptance green. Conversations based on the project stage. As a technical specialist, we often run to the technical. Someone gives you a job and you start doing technical things, neglecting that really it's all about openness and acceptance at the start of a project. For example, at project initiation, we must emphasize acceptance. We have to engage. Just as Simon Sinek, people buy why you're doing it, not what you're doing it. Because at the beginning, what you think you're doing may actually not be what you do at the end. So you need to focus on why. As we move further into the project, we can shift focus to cultivating openness, allowing people to expand their ideas, to come up with really good ideas. In midstream, our attention turns to the technical efforts because the technical thing is what we produce. That's what we'll build. That is the what. However, as completion nears, we need to recenter our focus for strong ownership and acceptance of the outcome. And again, note the ongoing need for facilitation, the red, and collaboration, the dark blue, throughout the whole life cycle of a project. Reflect on your current projects. Do you feel that you regulate this shift of conversations and focus? This quote is mine. It's all me. As a technical manager, I've worked on many different projects around the world. And I ask people now, have you ever written a document, a project plan, or a procedure that no one read? I'll ask that again. It's not a trick question. Have you ever written a document, project plan, or procedure that no one read? Me, definitely. This focus came from a project of mine that went wrong. And I can tell you, it was very stressful. My team were tasked with writing procedures and immediately began the technical work. The procedures were then sent out for review and received no comments. So we thought we were doing okay. Well, you know where this is going. So 5 months later, 2 weeks before commissioning, the red pen came out and caused lots of stress for my team and my project. I had to work through with the client, my sponsor. It was just a really difficult time of my life to do this. I learned never assume someone else is thinking about acceptance. I now plan for acceptance and monitor the effort to ensure strong acceptance. Success factor number 6, we will deliver better projects by applying an appropriate mix. A leader selects and applies best practice facilitation scenarios tailored to the project lifecycle, addressing specific project needs. For example, early in a project, we facilitate alignment, project kickoffs. We do things about aligning our project. Then as we move forward, we start to look at opportunity framing. Then we start to scope what we're going to work on. Later on, we'll do risk reviews. And finally, we'll do project reviews. I want you to notice in the alignment conversation, the focus is mostly about acceptance. You can see the green and the line that I've drawn. Very little technical. I always get worried in a kickoff meeting when all they're doing is talking technical because we still don't even know who the team is. We still don't even know who our sponsor is. In contrast, at a risk review, its primary focus is technical aspects and very little about acceptance because that's where we are. Now, the scenarios encompass various aspects of major, minor, and business improvement, and many companies already have these scenarios. You would have done an alignment workshop or project kickoff work. You're already doing these things. They can be selected and implemented individually, combined, or customized to address a specific project need. Now, there's 30 scenarios are fully documented in my publication, Project Success Scenarios. Now, I want you to take a reflection here. Do you select and apply these best practice facilitation scenarios at times through your project and plan for them? The last success factor. We're on the way down now, finishing off. Success factor 7, when we deliver, we will deliver better projects by applying responsive problem solving. Now, a leader proactively addresses project issues by employing targeted tools for facilitation. Openness, technical aspects, and the acceptance on day-to-day basis. They have to do this on a day-to-day basis and ensure the resolution is timely to get on top of these problems. Now, what you can see here is the project success framework. And a leader promptly selects a relevant tool when faced with an issue using this framework. For example, You want to counteract low project team motivation. Your team's not motivated. What do? Well, I suggest you use a force field analysis tool. It's really cool. You want to tackle project neglect by using a fast tool to install a sense of urgency, because if you can't make your project urgent, it will never be urgent. You want to provide clarity on tasks for a team. Use a work breakdown structure, which is a blue tool, a technical tool, while the previous were both acceptance green tools. Now, a full selection of the tools can be found in my publication, Project Success Toolkit. There's 150 tools in there, all color-coded amongst all of the different things I've collected over my career. So again, reflect on your current work. Do you proactively address issues on a day-to-day basis? Let's start to close out. Today, we had a high-level overview. We looked at project success, particularly Simon Sinek's view that people buy why we do things, not what we do. We talked about technical leadership, a typical career pathway. We then talked about the Sigmoid curve. And then we closed out on looking at some of the mistakes that we make. We then expanded on the success formula, identifying we have to have different conversations. We have to harness facilitation and embrace collaboration if we're going to make a real difference. We then discussed project delivery. And in that, we talked about my favorite graphic. We talked about the life cycle. We talked about changing and shifting focus and using some predefined scenarios and tools to help you do that. Again, as we get to the end, I want to acknowledge your experience. My goal today was to complement what you are already doing, not replace it. I'm sure some of these concepts you would have thought, well, yeah, I know that, and that's brilliant. Well, I'm hoping maybe one or two of these different ideas may give you a different perspective in your career, and take only the concepts that work for you. Remember, as my mentor said at the beginning, Richard, you are not alone. There are many people who want to help you be successful in your career. Find a mentor, read books like mine and others, and develop strategies to deliver project success. Now, we've just been through an hour, which I call level 0, an overview, project success leadership. There are another levels that are available for people to go through if they want to get a deeper understanding. For example, level 1's about introducing project success through leadership. It's a deeper level. And then we go even deeper in level 2, which is exploring project success through leadership. And then there's a final session, which is all about the Leader's Launchpad, which gives you a deep understanding of the tools and all the different techniques.